Hello you guys, it's Grace, and today I am going to be going through my 2022 TBR. Or at least part of it. I have a lot of books on my TBR this year that have been sitting on my bookshelf for a really long time and I just want to finish them, so I thought I would talk about them in this video, but I'm specifically going to be talking about my TBR just for like the first 6 to 7 months of the year because I am potentially moving in July or August, so I have a list of books that I want to finish before I move, so then when I do eventually move I can hopefully get rid of the books that I finally got to and didn't love that much, so then I have less to move, if that makes sense. So there probably won't be that many new books on this list, but nonetheless I'm very excited to talk about the books I do have to talk about. I'm going to go very quickly because there are going to be a lot of books on this list, and basically what I'm going to do is say the name of the book, the author, and then like a very, very brief synopsis to try to convince myself to read this book when I come back to look at this video to remind myself what I still need to read. Without further ado, let's jump into it. First off, I have One of Us is Lying by Karen Mcmanus. And basically what happens in this book is that 5 students go to detention, but by the end of detention, one of them is dead. So basically it's a murder mystery. It sounds very interesting. And I also have the next book here as well, so I'll hopefully get to both of these. The next book I have on my list is Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. This is another one that's been very interesting, but I just haven't got to. Basically, the premise of this one is that there are 3 sisters and they're all fighting for the crown. But unlike a lot of, royal families, they actually have to kill each other, I think. That's basically what it sounds like. I also have book 2 of this one, so hopefully I can get to both of them. Next up, I have The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. This one is self-explanatory as to why I want to read it. I love V.E. Schwab. All of her writing is fantastic, but the premise also sounds interesting. So this book sounds like there's a fairy tale called The Near Witch, and when children start disappearing from our main character's town, she starts to get more and more interested in what is going on and starts to explore if this fairy tale might actually be real. Next up, I have Ruby Red by Kirsten. This one was really popular on BookTube a really long time ago, and I want to get to it this year. So basically, this story follows our main character, Gwen, who lives in London, and time travel apparently runs in her family, but it's supposed to skip over her. When she starts experiencing jumps through time that come on extremely not on purpose, she's a little bit concerned, and it takes her on this big adventure. Also takes place in London, so I'm kind of excited. I have the other 2 books in this trilogy as well. Next up, I have Suicide Notes from Beautiful Girls. Our main character, June's best friend Delia, is said to have burned herself alive in a barn, and they call it a suicide. But June doesn't believe what she hears, so she tries to explore Delia's suicide and see what she can find out. Next up, I have A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahara Mafi. This is about our main character, Shirin, who is Muslim. This explores her challenges with being Muslim, and she ends up drowning her sorrows in music and breakdancing. But eventually she meets this guy named Ocean, and it sounds like there's a good little romance in here, and I'm very excited to give it a try. Next up, I have A World Without You by Beth Revis. This is a book about our main character, Beau, who believes he can travel through time. He eventually meets a girl named Sophia, but when she commits suicide, he believes that she did not do it and is actually still alive. So it's him exploring this and dealing with his mental illness. And it sounds like a really interesting story. I honestly don't know a whole lot about it, but it sounded like a good time. Next up, I have When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon, and this is another book that was really popular a few years ago, and it sounds really interesting. Dimple is not that thrilled about the idea of her parents setting her up with someone, but Rishi is kind of pumped about the idea of an arranged marriage. So when the 2 of them meet, interesting things happen. I'm excited to give this a try, and I also have the companion novel. Next up, I have What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This story follows Arthur and Ben when they meet at a post office. Camera hog. So Arthur is apparently a little bit of an optimist. He believes in love at first sight, and then Ben is a little bit of a pessimist. He doesn't really believe in any of that stuff. It's an interesting discussion about society and fate and love and all of that, and I'm very excited to give it a try. Next up, I have Windfall by Jennifer E. Smith. Alice buys her best friend Teddy a lottery ticket, and he ends up winning $140 million. And this story basically follows how that changes their life and their friendship, and I'm very pumped to give this a try. Next up, I have Foolish Hearts by Emma Mills, and this one, I'm not really sure what the premise is exactly, but basically I will just read a little bit of the inside cover. When Claudia accidentally eavesdrops on the epic breakup of Paige and Iris, the it couple at her school, she finds herself in hot water with prickly, difficult Iris. Thrown together against their will into a class production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, along with the goofiest, cutest boy Claudia has ever known, Iris and Claudia are in for an eye-opening senior year. Next up, I have The Night Watchmen by Louise Erdrich. This one is a book I received from my Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging book club. I'm not super familiar with the premise of this story, but it's based on the life of Louise Erdrich's grandfather, Patrick Gourneau, who worked as a night watchman. So basically it follows a character who is also a night watchman, and he's trying to understand the consequences of the new Emancipation Bill. But I wanted to include one book that would expand my horizons a little bit for my TBR. Then I have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This one is just a very popular book by our society, and I wanted to give it a try. So here's what it says. It begins with a boy, Theo Decker, a 13-year-old New Yorker, miraculously survives an accident that kills his mother. Abandoned by his father, Theo is taken in by the family of a wealthy friend. Bewildered by his strange new home on Park Avenue, disturbed by schoolmates who don't know how to talk to him, and tormented above all by his longing for his mother, he clings to the one thing that reminds him of her. A small, mysteriously captivating painting that ultimately draws Theo into the criminal underworld. So it sounds interesting, and then it basically moves into him as an adult, and it just sounds kind of beautiful and kind of fun, and I'm very excited to give it a try, even though it is a big book. Next up, I have Flame in the Mist by Renee Audie. This follows our main character, Mariko, and she is set up for an arranged marriage, despite all of her skills that could really help her in life, despite marriage. When her village is attacked, she ends up being the lone survivor and dresses up as a peasant boy to go explore life and all that. I don't know a whole lot about this one either, as you can tell by my very scrambled description, but it sounds interesting and I really like this author, so I'm excited to give it a try. Next up, I have Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is set in a world where you're born with either red or silver blood, and the red are born to serve the silver. So when our main character ends up at the palace, she discovers a hidden talent that she didn't know she has, but she has red blood, so it kind of doesn't seem like it should be possible. And in the story, it basically follows her adventure as she helps the Silver Guard and goes on this huge epic adventure. Sounds interesting. I don't know a whole lot about this trilogy either, but I think there are actually 4 books in it now. I'm not sure, but I plan on reading the first 3 this year. Hopefully I can get through them all. Then I have Obsidio by Amie Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the 3rd book in the Illuminae files. I did pick this up last year, but I was unable to finish it. I just couldn't get into it, so I decided to DNF it. But I did really enjoy the first 2 books in the series, so I imagine that I will like the 3rd book just as much if I give it another chance. Next up, I have Again But Better by Christine Riccio. This book follows our main character, Shane, as she's exploring college, and she thinks she's doing it all right. She has good grades and all this other stuff, but she hasn't been able to make any friends. She decides to take a semester abroad in London, and she's excited to meet new people and try to experience college, but she finds it's easier said than done when self-doubt begins to creep in. So I'm very excited to give this book a try, and while there are about 100 more books I could talk about, I am going to end it on this one, Afterworlds by Scott Westerfield. I'm just going to read this because I'm not really sure how to describe it. Believing is dangerous. Darcy Patel is afraid to believe all the hype, but it's really happening. Her teen novel is getting published. Instead of heading to college, she's living in New York City, where she's welcomed into the dazzling world of YA publishing. That means book tours, parties with her favorite authors, finding a place to live that won't leave her penniless. It means sleepless nights rewriting her first draft and struggling to find the perfect ending, all while dealing with the intoxicating, terrifying experience of falling in love with another writer. Told in alternating chapters is Darcy's novel, the thrilling story of Lizzie, who wills her way into the afterworld to survive a deadly terrorist attack. With survival comes the responsibility to guide the restless spirits that walk our world, including one ghost with whom she shares a surprising personal connection. But Lizzie's not alone in her new calling. She has counsel from a fellow spirit guide, a very desirable one, who is torn between wanting Lizzie and warning her that believing is dangerous. I forgot this was on my bookshelf, and I totally forgot the premise. I looked at it and I was like, I don't know, whatever. Now that I'm rereading the synopsis, I can't wait! This sounds so good. I want to start it now. I'm currently reading Caraval, or rereading Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I will be reading Legendary and Finale after that, so that is my current reads for January. And yeah, I have a lot on my plate for this year. I have all my diversity, inclusion, and belonging books I plan to read. Up here we have a ton of Owl Crate books that I'd like to get to, and then I have like Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, and then like A Map of Days that I still haven't gotten to, and a bunch of other books that you all have probably heard of and know everything about. I also ordered a bunch more books from Book Outlet recently, so why did I do that? I don't know. Yeah, that's my plan for 2022. I plan to do a TBR for each month because I have different like themes I'd like to read about each month, and I want to focus myself even more than just this massive list I just shared with you guys. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like this video, let me know what you're planning on reading this year, and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'll see you next time. Bye!